I had a follow-on question, actually. It was good to hear you guys talk about the laptops and take some notes and stuff. But so I think that 3 or 4 years ago, I don't remember quite how long, but that's probably about right. The discussion was, well, these laptops are coming in our class, and of course they were trickling in before then, right? But then it started to really kind of flood, and I think people were kind of, do I let these do it? Can I stop them? And all the rest of that stuff. Nowadays, it seems pretty obvious that you can't stop them. But and what I'm hearing from you guys is the same kind of stuff that we see. And a lot of it's about course design and how you stitch them in and everything else like that. But let me ask you a question on the other side. What about the whole inequality kind of question? So, out of your classes, are there students who don't have devices, and what does that mean? Can you structure your class in a way that requires a device, and can you reasonably expect students to have those devices? Has that been an impediment for anyone looking to kind of explore devices in the class? I'm seeing some head shaking. Any nodding?
Well, one of the things that I've done for some of the sessions that actually require a laptop is just ask them to share.
Yeah.
And that seems to actually work quite well.
Mm-hmm.
We're also considering doing a requirement for laptop or a tablet in the future, but we haven't actually made that move yet.
Right, device requirement. Okay. Any other thoughts? And how many people do you see tablets and PCs versus smartphones, so screen size? Do you see much of a pull where you've got a lot of students using the smaller screens for things, or are you comfortable that I'm still seeing a lot of, people are bringing laptops and devices? Good, okay. Well, that's kind of what we're going to assume here, but there may be questions about, boy, I don't have that, and ask them any time. The other thing I prefer to do is to be interactive. So I'll go through my 65 PowerPoint slides. No, wait, I only have 20, I guess, but throwing you all to sleep. So I'm with Echo 360. I'm based out of Natick, so I'm right in the area. I've been with Echo for over 8 years now, and prior to that, I was with a company called WebCT. If you remember them, they were a learning management system. I did, but did not complete some master's work at Distance Ed right here at BU, and I've also been an instructor at a small liberal arts school many years ago, where I taught marketing on an adjunct basis. So what I wanted to kind of walk you through and tell you a little bit about was lectureTools and some concepts for why you may or may not want to use it. I'm on the vendor side, and we're always supposed to have an elevator pitch, right? And if you know what an elevator, you got to explain to an important executive who's standing in front of you within the time that it takes from the first floor to the 6th floor what your product does. I don't have that yet. This is a really robust product with a lot of richness to it, so I haven't figured that out. And I've never actually met a CEO in an elevator who I have to explain something to in 10 seconds anyway. So, so this is what lectureTools is. It was designed by Perry Sampson, who's a meteorological professor out of the University of Michigan, and it's used in a lot of health sciences schools, a lot of nursing, a lot of pharma. But Perry's point was this, and he teaches. Oh, let me ask this question actually: how many people teach to classes of more than 50 students? A couple? So most of you are a little bit on the smaller seminar side. Okay, good. Good to know. Perry's main issue for driving this was when he'd go to his classes, he'd see a lot of Dell and HP and Apple logos. And he'd wonder, and he tried to be forward-thinking, hey, this is good, right? But he'd always wonder, what are they looking at? Are they looking at my, oh, we're taking notes, but then there's the quick key flip when you walk behind them, right? You're like, well, exactly where you on? Much like my 13-year-old daughter right now. But so his point was, how do I get them engaged with the content through the device? So that's really what this product is all about. You can, they can come in, they can take notes. Certainly, if you're doing Excel, they're engaged in the device. If you're doing, SAS modeling, anything like that, stuff where it's inherently natural for them to be using a computer, you kind of feel like, okay, that's pretty good. But the point of lectureTools is to kind of bring that to all of what you're doing in the class. So there is a student note-taking facility, allows the students to take notes. There's a facility to engage them on a student response basis. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that. But the point is to help you support an in-class experience that drives them to engage with the material through the device rather than it being sort of this ancillary piece they may or may not be using for all the good things you're trying to do in class. I am presenting right now from lectureTools, so I have it in the cloud. And the nice thing about this is we did get my laptop up on the network, but if we didn't, I could present from any computer because the content I've loaded up into the cloud. If you want to follow along on lectureTools, you can go to you can go to lecturetools.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you click Login. And then I think it says, I have a username. I think it actually says email. Email username, same thing, demo1033. Just leave the password blank and then log in. If you're on a tablet, it will redirect you to the app. If you're on a PC, it will get you into the HTML5
Let's take
interface.
a minute or so just to ask you to do that. It would be good for you to experience what a student would experience with this. Just take a minute. Yeah.
And after you log in, it'll also say enter your first course. And then down in the right-hand corner, it should just say, have that option, enter your first course. It looks something like this. This is lecturetools. Press the login. Demo 1033. Leave the password blank. Then you hit submit, and it'll give you this screen. And you want to click enter your first course down here in the right-hand corner. Now, in real life, if you had students, each one of your students would have an independent login. We are using a blanket demo user account. So you'll notice some quirky things like I don't believe that this will save notes. You can take notes and do all sorts of things. I don't think it saves the data as a demo user. And the other thing is when I go to show you responses, et cetera, you'll see that everybody's demo 1033. But in real life, of course, you would have individual logins, take your own notes, all that kind of thing. So when you click on enter your first course, it should drop you right into the presentation, which is here. Does it make sense? So that's the student experience from their computer. And right off the bat, I can tell you this right now. In my company, I insist that everybody, when we do our corporate presentation, I'm like, you've got to use lecturetools because I can't keep up with my changing eyeglass prescription. And if I get stuck in the back row, I can't see the screen. So I'm always like, if you just give it to me at lecturetools, I can see it right there. I don't have to squint or anything else like that. Another great benefit, by the way, is if underneath here you click on Browse Slides, you can actually browse the slides. Now, as a faculty member, I could choose to hide slides if I want to. I'm not doing that now. But the thing I like about this is if I get to, as a student, professor gets up to slide 10 and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't understand how that applies back to what they talked about in slide 5. I can navigate back to slide 5. Instead of, can you go back to slide 5 because I really had a question, I can go and check that myself. Then I can choose to engage with the professor with a question. So there's some really nice things right off the bat in just terms of having the content in front of you. So that's what you've got in front of you is the student experience on their laptop. Now if you can hold on with me for a second because I need to explain something which gets a little tricky. The way lecturetools is actually set up, it's set up for a split screen. So normally what I'd keep on my laptop is a dashboard. So as a faculty member I can see what's going on in my class. And then I would present the slides up here. So this is normally what I'd put on the projector, and then this is what I would have on my laptop. And as you guys ask questions or as activity responses come in, I can see all that information. It's really hard to demo that because I don't have two projector screens up here. So just what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back and forth between the dashboard and the slides. Does that make sense?
Bill, may I interrupt for a
Yeah.
second? There are a couple of people who have lecturetools accounts.
Okay.
And what do they do in that case?
Well, those are, you're not registered as users. You'll have to log out and log back in as demo 1033 with no password. Otherwise, you'll be in a student account with no access to this class.
Okay.
So you log in as a different user.
So
If you don't know, just so you're aware, you can have both a student and an instructor. For those of you who have been testing lecturetools, you can have both a student and an instructor ID. So you can see your course from a student perspective. You can also go in and make changes as an instructor. Rob, are we all set to move forward?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We don't want to belabor this. I mean, we do want you to have a satisfying experience, but if you can just bear with us, if you have not been able to connect, then we'll sort that out later if there's time.
So I just want to run through really quickly. One of the nice things about lecturetools is it's designed to be a fairly low footprint. So what you need in order to use lectureTools as an instructor, you need an account, you need a computer attached to the projector with an internet connection. You need some sort of presentation. Basically, it'll ingest a PDF. It'll ingest PowerPoint natively or PDF. You need some time to prepare your presentation, obviously. And then we'll go through the exercises and the student response types, but you want to think through your responses and your questions. I might have accidentally hit. So it's fairly lightweight, and all the student needs in the class is, I might have a slide on that, but all the student needs is obviously internet access on a device. So this is our first response question. If you guys, from your interface, if you want to navigate a couple slides over to what best describes you, you should see a question for that. And you can just click on one of the answers. Of course, this is health science, so I suppose I should have. I don't think there's anybody here from academic humanities, but. Oops, there we go. So it should be open for responses. Are folks finding that okay? Yep, we have a couple of responses so far. So we have 2, 3. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry, thank you. So as a faculty member, again, I could have my slides being projected on one screen, but I also have a dashboard that tells me how the responses are coming in. Now, just for the sake of time, and since it's not actually a very worthwhile poll, I'm gonna close out the poll. So I can close out polling, and I can begin to look at the results. So I can present the results to my students. So we could start to see that. Now I'm presenting results without the answers. And then we could obviously, this is a ridiculous little question, but we could begin to talk through what that question, what that poll meant. And I don't have an answer marked here. So if I did, I could click on answer. It would show graphically what the answer was. But obviously, this is not that kind of question. You can use the same thing for people use it for attendance, and these things are recorded to the student level. So you have a recording of how the student responded, and it's gradebook exportable into Blackboard should you so choose.
And you can text as well if you aren't, if you're not connected to lectureTools, you could use your cell to text.
That's true. Make sense? All right, and then I mentioned this. What do the students need? They need some sort of device.
You're going to talk about follow-up questions after?
Yep. So lectureTools can handle a number of interactive questions. One of the types is multiple choice quizzes. How many here have used clickers? And how many here have used the software version of clickers? A couple? One? So one of the powerful things about clickers is, hey, it's a little lightweight device. I can carry it anywhere. It's easy to answer, A, B, C, D. I'm off and running. So that's been a fairly positive aspect of clickers. The downside of that is if you're in a largish class and students wanted to kind of cover each other, you can certainly share clickers. That's pretty easy. Take my clicker today and sign me in by clicking on it. That's a little harder when you're using a student ID, et cetera. So it helps with that. Also, some of the other downsides for clickers is batteries and asking students to buy devices. You know, there's a whole number of things. They're certainly easy and lightweight. The biggest thing, though, for me is, particularly on a physical clicker, you're really limited. You've got A, B, C, D, E. There's two issues for that. Number one, I mean, closed questions are useful. They're very useful when you design them appropriately and you bring them in your pedagogical model and all the rest of the stuff and what you're doing in class. For me, sometimes, though, I'm not necessarily sure that I have a good design around my closed-ended question. So one of the things that using device-based responses is you can have open-ended questions. Because you have keyboards, you can ask them to type in a short paragraph. And I personally would find that useful, having had to redesign the curriculum that I've used in my class a couple times. I would use that to start shaping how students think about something. So that's information back to me. I know it's very powerful, obviously, to test their knowledge, but I want to ask questions and find out how do they think about this. And then I might go back and reanalyze that and begin to either think about how I'm presenting it, or maybe I want to start molding closed-ended questions the next time around. So to me, it's a very powerful way to get information back, as well as, obviously, to evaluate and gauge where the students are. Another thing that is great is you can nest these things. So you could have a closed question followed by an open question, which allows you to answer here and then defend your answer. In lectureTools, the results are available and shown back to the students, but not with names attached. The professor can see the names attached, but not the other students. So very quickly, you could bring up a list, and I think I might even have a slide on this. You can bring up a list of open-ended questions. You can see what the responses are, but the other students don't know who answered that way. And then you can begin to unpack it. Well, let's work on this one and those kinds of things. So short, free response, ordered list, rank these things in most important, 1 through 5. Image quiz is one of the most powerful ones, and I'm going through my whole presentation without my slides. I've got a couple of slides on that. Numerical response, so you want to do a calculation. We have full support for, I forget the name of it now, but it's one of the most robust equation editors. But we have a full support for equation editors if you use that, statistics or something like that. And then we also have support for multimedia slide playback. We talked a little bit about the student interface, but let me walk you through it a little bit more. Now, you all have the student interface. You all have access to it, and I mentioned the ability to do browse slides. One of the things you might notice right away, and again, I don't know, I believe in the demo user, it won't save the notes, but the student can take their notes along the side, right attached to the content. One of the powerful things here is, put a lame note in there. When I want to print them, it actually brings me up. So as a student, I can save this as a PDF or print it out, but I can create a study guide. So I have my notes next to my slides. And the slides would include the questions and the responses if you choose to leave them available for the students to download them. But I can do the notes. I can do notes against each slide as I go along. That's an important part of the interface. Obviously, it drives the students to actually using the device for content as they're going, because it's a note-taking facility. But I also have a couple other powerful tools. One of the tools is I have the ability as a student to draw on my slides if I want. I have the ability to star or bookmark slides that I want to return to later. And I have the ability to flag slides. Does everybody see that little flag in the upper corner? If you click on that on your interface. Doesn't mean much to you guys. But I go back here and, hey, you know what? 13 of my students are confused right now. So if I have my dashboard open while I'm talking, again, I would have the slides up here, but on my dashboard, I can see immediately, hey, you know what? My students don't understand what I'm talking about. You may, and it's up to you, right? This is a tool. So you may choose to follow along with that in class and pay attention to that. You may choose to use the dashboard. You might choose not to. But that's recorded and presented back to you in a quick report card. So an hour after your class, you get a little thing that says, it's usually less than an hour, but up to an hour after your class, you get a little thing that will break down for you where students were confused at each point in your presentation. So you're immediately getting feedback as to where people understand or don't understand the content.
So we all logged in using the same login code, but how does it know we're separate students?
It's just doing a count right now. And you're right, because you're all demo 1033, it doesn't.
Well, right, but like if I write a note on one thing, it's not going to show up on everybody else's, right? Or is it just set up in demo?
In the demo, yeah, it's just a demo environment. If you all had individual logins, your notes would be attached to your login only. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, but with this generic demo environment, it doesn't quite work that way. Yeah. Sometimes when we do full bore training, we would usually get your emails ahead of time. We'd set you all up with user accounts so that you can understand. But this is a little bit more of an overview. But yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good question. But I can see immediately who's confused and who isn't.
Can you use this offline? Can you like, load your PowerPoint in it and put some audio in it and then have students do it outside of class?
It's a fair question. With a slightly complicated answer, the short answer is no, not today in this tool as it is. The longer answer is we actually have a capture side of our business, the Echo Lecture Capture, and this is a new tool. Our R&D labs are bringing those two together. So down the road, it's our vision to allow the video record and playback alongside this, in which case you could absolutely do that. That is not anything we can do today, but that's where we're headed. One thing we can do, if you do use Echo Lecture Capture and you do use lectureTools, you can actually embed the polling questions into captures. So after you've done a capture, you can use the polling tools from lectureTools to embed it. But the whole note-taking environment, flagging, confusing, all this kind of stuff, they're still a little separate, but they will be coming together. I shouldn't put timing, especially when I'm on tape here, but not this summer. Sometime after the summer is all I'll say. Well, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but that's absolutely where we're headed.
Bill, those folks who are using this currently, are they generally using TAs to monitor the dashboard?
It depends. I think in the larger classes, people use TAs. I mean, not everybody has a TA too, particularly when you get in a seminar level, et cetera. You know, you don't necessarily have a TA. Where people do have TAs, I've heard it's very powerful and effective. So we have a number of folks, particularly in the Midwest and the Southeast, who are using this for large classes, and they're using TAs. I think when you, because that's kind of easy, and another feature I'll show you is the students can ask questions. So when you click on the Ask Question button, you guys can feel free to do this, you can type in a question and submit it. And then you hit Submit. Now, from a student perspective, you don't see it, but from the instructor dashboard, I get questions that pop up. So if you are using a TA concept, or if you're willing to go and monitor that, you can see electronic questions as they come in. Now, if I don't have a teaching assistant, do we got another one? What is it? I'm just going to delete that one. Can I delete that one? I don't think I can. Isn't it 42 or something? So why is the demo taking so long? Or either one of these. Right now, this is only exposed to me as the instructor, so I see it. I may choose to answer them. I may choose not to. Even if I'm not going to answer them electronically in class, I can still see them. So I could say, hey, a question just popped up. Let me unpack it. Then after class as an instructor, I can go back and add those to the session. So choose to answer it or not answer it, depending on how your workflow works in the class. After class, you may want to use it as a way to go back and answer people's questions. You know who asked the questions. The other students won't. So if I answer this one, I'm going to avoid the meaning of life here. So if I answer that question, you should, from your student interface, see how it has a little mark, question 1? I can flip over to questions, and I can see the question and the answer. I don't know who asked it. In this case, we happen to all know we're the same person. But so that way, as we go through the class or after the class, students' questions come in, I can answer them. We've been very excited about this feature. It was a very simple feature. It was just an idea, hey, let's add this. And what our faculty are finding is that students who don't normally vocal, they love this. Whether they're, maybe they've got they're second language learners, speech impediment, they just don't want to feel dumb because they think it's a dumb question. They'll ask questions here. And it's a great way, number one, to obviously feedback with the class, but also to gauge, because you know who the students are, to gauge where they are, what they might be struggling with.
Can you come to the answers after the class, because I don't think you will have time to answer while lecturing.
Yeah, so you can go back after the class as a professor and answer the questions, and then they'll be populated for the students, as long as you keep the course up. I mean, if you take the class down, then they lose access to it. But
is there a way to keep it anonymous if you want? In my policy class, I ask them questions about their political views, and I actually don't want to know who knows what. I want them to think I know.
yeah, no, we've had that request. I don't think it exists today in the system, but it's a request that we're looking at. I believe it's maybe even on the roadmap to be built in because of those very same questions. And a lot of questions we gotten feedback from a lot of ethics-based classes and things like that. People want a little bit more freedom to ask. It's not in the product that you could test this spring, but I believe it's on the roadmap. It's a good question. You could always, I mean, it's kind of a kludge, but I mean, you could set up a separate thing and give everybody a generic password, depending on what you're doing in your class. You might want the very specific notes pieces. I just don't think it's probably a good tool for anonymous polling right now, but we hope to get there. Other questions? So we found that to be really positive for the students who maybe are less vocal in their class. So that's kind of we've kind of walked through, you can take notes, respond to polls, browse slides, Q&A with the instructor. And we've also had this question, can I use it for my distance ed programs? There's no reason why you can't. It can be used synchronously. It could be used asynchronously. So it's a little bit, it's lacking a few things, I think. One of the things it doesn't have that is definitely on the roadmap, because we're finding more and more people want to use this for distance ed. There's no button for the student to say sync to where the professor's at, and there's no button for the professor to force sync everybody. Now, one of the reasons why we purposely didn't design a force sync is because if you're going to be forced off a page, you can't take notes, you can't make your drawings and editings. So we thought, we shouldn't force sync, but some people really wanted, some faculty are like, I really, really want to be able to force all my students on there. But the other side of it is the students to just say, take me right to where the professor is, because particularly in a distance ed where you may be over a telephone line or something, you might have lost track where the student is. So those pieces are two things we're building. Outside of those two missing pieces, though, we're starting to see more and more use this for distance ed and hybrid type of purposes if you have those sorts of sections. We talked through this. This might be screenshots. So this is explain the benefits to students of note-taking this way. And I think polling should be open. And don't forget the submit button in the lower right-hand corner. So as you guys answer, the response field here will be populated. So I could, during my class, begin to. So what does that mean if the groundhog doesn't shoot in shadows? Does that mean 6 more? I don't remember. So this way we could begin to explore and unpack these kinds of questions. And if I did have an answer, again, I could show the answer and the answer would populate. And although I think in open-ended questions it says not applicable. I was going to say I don't think there is a way to do answers in open-ended questions. There is no answer on open-ended questions. It's just meant to elicit response and feedback. So we talked a little bit about the multiple choice, and we actually walked you through a demonstration on that. We talked about the assessment and the feedback kind of thing. This is the image-based quiz, and I don't have actually I blew past the live one of this. I did put it in here, but I'll explain it. It'll be good enough. What this is this allows you to take a still image and load it up into the system, and then you can actually, as a professor, you can mark the area that is the correct answer. Then you can ask the students to respond to it, and with a click of the mouse or on a touchpad with their finger, they can respond to where they think the answer is. This, with Perry being a meteorological professor, this is Katrina, I think, right, that hit New Orleans. And his question was, I think it's up here, where do you expect the greatest storm surge? And the answer, which makes sense to me once I heard it, is the greatest storm surge should just be to the east of the eye, because this is the smallest area. It's whipping around the fastest. It's coming off the water. It hasn't hooked back over land yet where it loses a lot of its power. It should be right here. So what did Perry learn here? Perry learned he didn't teach the subject very well. He's got dots all over the place. So right away to him, this was feedback that, maybe this isn't clear. So it was more of a summative question, not summative, I'm just blanking. But anyway, as you went, he did a checkpoint. Let's step back, re-examine what we taught here, and maybe go through. Or maybe he's using it for summative. Maybe he's quizzing them. So either way. So the image-based stuff, particularly in health sciences and these kinds of things, has been really powerful.
That's just a JPEG.
That's a JPEG. I think it takes others, PNG, static screenshots, though, not video.
But you could do a JPEG of a chart and ask people to mark something on the chart.
Yep, or epidemiological surveys, geographical distributions, any kind of list. Where would health vector, where would disease vectors go? I mean, any kind of thing that may be pertinent to your topic. So I just wanted to show you a quick video to demonstrate two things. Number one, I wanted to show you the video because I think it's a powerful testimony, but also number two, you can embed videos. So you can embed YouTube videos and these kinds of things. And then those links become active for the students when they go back to review the content. When they open up the lecture tools, they see the questions and the surveys and the answers and their notes and all the rest of the stuff. They also have access to YouTube or other types of videos.
Right here, and you can see a little square. The classroom is completely different. What are we to do in the classroom that takes advantage of the bodies being in the room? I was frustrated by the lack of engagement in my big lecture class. With lectureTools, I started thinking, what do I want them to know right now? Not what do I want to be saying to them, what do I want them to know? So it changed my whole point of view. I took my PowerPoint slides, uploaded them, very simple to do. I'm often removing material from those slides and replacing it with an interactive activity because they have to engage with the material right now. What do you think about this? They're active with the material, they find out what they know, what they don't know. Then I can peek into their minds. I can see what they don't know. It's right there on the screen. Then we can talk about it. The more conventional technology is clickers. You put up a multiple choice question, the students select one of the responses. But that didn't help me with anatomy because what I want to do is show them images and say where on this image is the muscle. The image-based questions where the students can interact with an image. That's everything for me with such a visually intensive course as anatomy. I can ask them about a particular muscle that they're still learning with the free response. They make up anatomical names. I love that because I can see right what they're thinking. They can get rewarded for partial learning, for diving in to the material. It's activating them. Instead of teaching, it's learning. It changes everything for me. Sharing the material, a conversation about the material, which is joyful for me as a professor and much more interesting to them.
So that's Dr. Melissa Gross. It was a kinesiology, I think, or something. So that's an example of one professor, how she's using it and how she's finding the tools. But also, I like the video a lot, but also it just shows you the embed features and functionality. So this is an example of the report card that comes back to you. You can probably see it right there on your slides as well, because this is a little washed out. It says questions asked by students, 26 total asked, 3 remain unanswered, preview of the unanswered questions, and then a link that as a professor I get this in email, and then that link takes me right to lectureTools, so I can see the questions, see how people responded. Content slides, 9% were confused here, 23% confused here, 12% were confused here. I had 4 activities, 76% average response rate, 54% correct, and again, always a click that allows me to go right in. And then I have a quick attendance report. 64% of students attended this lecture. So it's a lightweight email that comes to you but gives you immediate interaction. So you say, wait a minute, yeah, I wasn't paying attention to my dashboard, but 40% of my students were confused at this part. I'm going to jump in and take a look at it. Then if you're using Capture, one of the things I like about Capture is you could go into that presentation in the Capture and see exactly, let me review how I pitched this, what happened in the class, and then you can get a good sense for what you were doing. Don't need Capture to get the benefits of lectureTools, but I like the 1-2 punch of the two tools together. That was hard to say. So it's a quick, light email piece. This is just a little thing to consider, I guess. This is just some feedback from Michigan, but some professors enjoyed an uptick in their teacher evaluation after they started using lectureTools. Just a little bribe, I guess. I don't know. For those of you who haven't seen the iPad, because you're all using, most of you are using laptops, this is what the iPad app looks like. So you have the ability, their keyboard pops up, and students can take notes on the iPad. This is what a question might look like, A, B, C, D, E, when they get to a question slide. This is this would be the example of video, plus I've clicked on, I want to ask a question. So the iPad app gives them, it's a little bit laid out differently, but it's a very similar experience and tool set. I think, and this is an example of how you can annotate. So this is a slide of what I'm presenting, and you can draw and annotate all over the slides for stuff that's meaningful to you as a student. Is there a question?
I have a question about the annotation.
Yep.
Is there an erase function?
There is. One of the things I've recently taken to product is the erase clears the slide as opposed to a small piece of it. And I think we need to adjust that because you may want to erase this but not everything else. Yeah, it's a fair question though. So that was it on my slides, but one thing I I didn't think to set it up. I'm sorry, Rob. I should have set it up. But I should have gotten my iPad on the network. But since it's not, I can't do this. But one of the other things that teachers really like, that instructors really like, is we use this application, but there are other applications. We're actually going to build it into our product. It's been so positive. There's a tool called, I think it's called SplashTop, and it's a $4.99 download or something like that. SplashTop is a way for you as the instructor to control your computer from your iPad. I don't know anything about Android, sorry. I just happen to own an iPad, so I'll have to find out. I'm sure SplashTop or some other equivalent has it for your tablet for Android. But I did this in a demo, my last couple of demos, and I forgot to set it up here. But you can actually control your lectureTools or your laptop in general from your iPad. And that's not our technology. SplashTop is not ours. So even if you didn't try lectureTools, you can go and look at this anyways. And that frees you up to walk around the classroom. And it works really well. You can control your laptop from your tablet. So you could walk around, you could engage the class. Maybe they're in group work and you want to go to them in their different pods as you talk about what's up on them, but you want to be able to go back, oh, here, group 2 has this question. Let me go back to that slide, or let me go back to that point. So that's a really powerful thing. I think it's a good technology in and of itself, so I'd encourage you to explore it. It's called SplashTop. I use a Mac. I don't know the PC side, but it works fantastic on my Mac. It was really easy to set up. It was not difficult at all. But when you're running the lectureTools piece, it's really powerful because you can put up the questions, you can do all sorts of things, and you can walk around and engage with the students as they're working in groups or individually to answer those questions.
I have some information on that if you're interested as well, an article.
So that was all I came prepared necessarily to present. I'm happy to talk, take questions, discuss, give any feedback on.
From the Disted side, you said that you've seen this application used. Is it embedded like a PowerPoint into a Blackboard course, or how exactly do?
Well, they use it. The link could certainly be embedded in Blackboard.
It's right to the site.
Yeah, it's still going to require authentication, and we do have single sign-on with Blackboard, so we can support. Hey, I logged into Blackboard, I clicked on it, it's going to let me into lectureTools. So that whole thing could be supported, but it would be a link, within Blackboard. Other questions?
So I know that on the medical campus here that the med school's been using the capture software quite a bit. We've had some difficulties as of recently. So I'm wondering what kind of difficulties you know of that maybe people have been experiencing with the active learning portion.
Well, the med school's not using the lectureTools piece yet.
Right.
Oh, did you mean lectureTools or just, or do you mean medical or just in general?
I know they're using the capture. So.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that's happening at BU in general. The admin, BU admin had a changeover, the guys who supported Echo, so we're trying to support them with that. We're doing some training and all the rest of that stuff. And they've had a couple of device issues. Those are the issues that I'm aware of. They're not using lectureTools, so I can't talk to the BU lectureTools piece. But lectureTools in general is a cloud-based solution, so the administration and the server and everything is being run by us in the cloud. So you don't have to worry about necessarily the BU server having issues. So some of those issues should be taken care of. The feedbacks that I've heard that have been most negative on lectureTools in some of my customers is the delete. Someone asked about the delete. I think you did. Yeah, the delete where it seems to delete everything. That seems like a miss. So we're going to have to change that. And then, the drawing or annotation piece on the iPads, if you've got low bandwidth in the classroom, can frustrate students a little bit. It can be a little laggy. But that was driven by one customer's particularly poor bandwidth that they were experiencing in a classroom. But you're connecting, real time to the annotations and the drawings and stuff. Those are probably the two biggest things that I've heard recently in terms of some usability pieces. But that was overshadowed. I mean, even in the students, and we didn't see that until the students wrote because they asked them, they were piloting, they said, what did you think of it? And those were two of the negatives that they wrote. But the benefits, they clearly said the benefits of everything else far outweighed the negatives, but those were a couple of the frustrations they had. The nice thing is the frustrations, those two were more about, the usability. It's not like unstable system or something like that. That part, was working very well. It was just a couple of things we need to fix on the interface side. The other thing I would say too is just, and and again, this goes back to policy why I asked the question, are your students bringing devices? That's the main question, because when you start using lectureTools, you're obviously requiring it. But, and this is just my own commercial about this, and laptop use, et cetera. I mean, we all know it's coming. We all know they're going to be driving more and more towards it. And I like this idea of setting up the content and driving them through a channel which they engage they use their devices to engage the content. It seems to me that if the device is on the periphery for their own uses, they could end up in YouTube land very quickly or whatever, and I don't know if you guys do, but I experience that. Click on this, oh, then click on this, and then pretty soon you're like, oh, wait a minute, what happened here? This really keeps them engaged. Then on the back end, you get all these kinds of information about what they're doing, what they're looking at, who's confused, and all the rest of that stuff. And then the third piece is the whole robust student engagement piece, where you can start doing some different things in your classes. The clickers have been great, but now you can do open-ended questions, you can do video questions, just like Dr. Gross was saying there on the video. So it is a little bit of a mental shift, but I think the students really appreciate it, and they're more likely to bring their devices when you start offering this kind of value around it. And then the value that it gives you back as a professor, I think, is pretty high. So that to me is one of the tricks, and one of the questions a lot of professors have had for me as we present this stuff is, some of my students don't have devices. This is a great way to get people focused on how to use them productively.
Could you say something about the program that you've rolled out, enabling us to take advantage of this currently licensed software?
Yeah, it's just, for BU right now, it's unlimited. There's no limits on you guys to try it out this spring for free. That's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
So if folks find it's interesting and you want to use it, we're working with Rob and to some extent Dominic and some others to support you guys. We'd like you to trial it. This was launched in the Midwest, so we have pretty good users in the Midwest, and just coincidentally like Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. I've been here for a long time. We've got 58 customers in the Northeast, but we're just beginning to pilot it and try this with Northeast customers. So we're very interested in working with schools like BU who can use this and get your students used to it and give us feedback. The product's been around for several years, but we're always trying to grow and adapt it. Oh, sorry.
Will it be available in the fall as well?
That wasn't part of the agreement. It was the spring, but I hope it's available in the fall.
Are there some more intensive training courses scheduled or to be scheduled, or are we kind of on our own for the spring?
Well, we haven't scheduled any yet. I would love to have some folks dive in and give this a try, in which case we would, we have been to training, online training from Echo 360, so it is available, and they've provided a bit of support, for me to get up to speed with it. But I would love to get a few folks who would be willing to commit to it, at least in to some extent, that then we could provide that training and then also be supportive of each other and share some ideas. So it seems to me like a very good opportunity. We have also purchased a couple of laptops, knowing that there are students who may not, even though they would bring laptops if they could, they may just not have laptops. That's certainly the minority, but we are aware of that, and we have purchased a couple of laptops with that in mind. So that should not be a detriment to anybody who's considering to explore this event. Wolfie?
So, ideally you'd want to design this into, at least I would, into my course, but I'm not teaching it till the fall. And I think it's too late to do that for the spring semester, even if you started your course, just because you've got your course design kind of done. That's why I was asking the question about whether or not it would be available in the fall, because then you could start thinking about, how you could incorporate this into your classroom and test it out and see
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. We'll see how the spring goes, and we'll figure out what it means in the summer. I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's kind of never a good time when people are, busy getting their courses going, and I think I had the sense that once courses got established, that although it's not integrated up front, it still may be you may be able to have a useful learning experience for you and your students, even if you employed it now or a few weeks from now. I think it still could be useful.
But just to be clear, does this mean, is this a matter of sort of working through to get a licensing agreement at some later point, or will we ask about the future semesters?
Yeah, I mean, right now, IT